Welcome to Talent Freaks with Andy Coon. I'm Andy, a filmmaker and photographer based in the Bay Area of California. This podcast delves into the journeys of creative individuals who inspire curiosity and impact through their work. Today, we are revisiting a fun conversation I had from 2010 with the talented Tom Maxwell. Now, as a key member of the Squirrel Nut Zippers, Tom's songwriting and performances included the hit song Hell, were instrumental in the band's success during the swing revival of the 1990s. Since our original interview, Tom has continued to make significant contributions to the music and literary scenes. In 2014, he published his memoir, Hell, My Life in the Squirrel Nut Zippers, offering an intimate look into his experiences with the band. In 2024, he published another book titled A Really Strange and Wonderful Time, The Chapel Hill Music Scene, 1989 to 1999, claimed as the first biography of the thriving and influential rock scene in Chapel Hill, which gave the world artists like Ben Folds 5, Superchunk, and Squirrel Nut Zippers. In this episode, we delve into Tom's creative journey, his reflections on the music industry, and the stories behind some of his most memorable songs. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and rate Talent Freaks on your favorite podcast platform. It helps others discover these inspiring stories, and I'm incredibly grateful for it. Let's go back in time to 2010 and let the younger version of myself introduce you to Tom Maxwell. Tom is a multi-platinum artist, composer, writer, and smart mouth, and most of all, he's a good friend of mine. Tom was in Squirrel Nut Zippers between 1994 and 1999 and wrote their top 20 hit, Hell, propelling the band to multi-platinum sales. Songs that he wrote for the band have appeared in dozens of movies and television shows, including Sesame Street, yes, Sex and the City, Dead Like Me, Sleeps with Fishes, Three to Tango, a Super Bowl ad, and the Tony Award-winning Broadway soundtrack for Contact. Since leaving the Zippers, Tom has written for movies and television, including Lifetime's Love Spring, International, Happily Never After, Testimo commercials, and the Academy Award-nominated Deliver Us from Evil. He's also written articles that have been published in the Oxford American, Southern Cultures, College Music Journal, and the Independent Weekly. Friends, may I present Tom Maxwell in Conversations with Coon. Enjoy. So, I mean, you're multi-talented. I mean, you've written books, musician. Yeah, you're gloating over there.
I mean, I haven't written books yet. I mean, I've written stuff, it ain't been published. But I'm not. Go ahead. That just seems I'm not gonna split hairs.
Okay.
I mean, thanks. Yeah, I'm a communicator, Andy. That's what I feel like I am. Like, it dawned on me that I'm a communicator. So
I like to call you as a talent freak, because you pretty much seem like you morph into, like, anything you want to do, you do it.
Do I owe you money now? Or how does this work?
Just wait until, the 5 people download this, and then you'll see.
Oh, thank you.
Well, so how did you get started? Like, when did you know that you wanted to do all these creative things when you're young? And how was that different than, other people? Or if it wasn't?
I can't speak for other people. I don't, let's see. There was a kind of a tectonic shift that happened, like, when I was 11, where I started learning alto saxophone, and I went through puberty. So I started masturbating. I think these things really go hand in hand. I don't know about the writing thing, but I did write, and I did like to write. And then I also was class clown, I guess. I was definitely class clown. And then I think what might have informed all this was we moved to the mountains of North Carolina when I was 6 from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where I was born. So it was a bit of a culture shock. And then the mountains are really beautiful, and there's some really great people that live there, but it's a little bit of a closed environment. It's a little hermetic, and it can be a little xenophobic. And so that really sort of, established an outsider identity for me, you know. And then there was a kind of also physical isolation where we lived on a mountain, you know, as if the town wasn't small enough. We just went ahead and moved on a mountain, you know. And so I think that all kind of went hand in hand. But I got the bug for music for sure. And so all the way up through middle school and high school, that's not that I applied myself in any sort of, you know, with any sort of rigor, but I listened, oh my God. And I was teaching myself the drums. I was in marching bands, you know, playing a saxophone, stuff like that. And I don't know that I didn't make a huge push to be in bands until I was in bands, you know, in college. And
where'd you go to college?
University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Thank you very much. It was great. Bands everywhere as far as the eye could see, you know. I remember going to a house party on, we'll say Carr Street. I just remember, and it was a while ago, and the Bad Checks were there. Do you know about that band?
I don't know about them.
Great. This like punk band from Chapel Hill, early 80s. And they had this song called Johnny, Why Don't You Bring Your Girlfriend Home that is so good. And they're the nicest guys on the planet. This is the thing. They're actually the nicest guys on the planet, but I was terrified of them when I went to this party.
What was it, just because of music you loved it, or
maybe they would hit me or something? I don't know, but they're sweeties, you know. One of them showed me how to make a marijuana pipe out of an apple, which seems like a kind of an update on the whole Andy Griffith thing. Holy first.
Oh yeah. That's the beauty of college, when you figure out you can use pretty much almost anything for.
Just grow on trees to smoke things that grow out of the ground. Yeah, college well spent.
Now, did it taste differently?
Tasted like apple. Tasted kind of like piney apple. Yeah. Not good for eating afterwards, you know.
Oh no, I bet not.
Yeah. And then, you know, so, you know, I was a slacker for sure. So the real world did not agree with me. I didn't know what to do. I was just in bands, you know, that's what I did. And so after I got out of college, I stuck around Chapel Hill and, you know, worked in restaurants like everybody else and played in bands like everybody else, and had some idea that every college town was like that. I assumed that every college town was like that, and I thought maybe Chapel Hill was holding me back, and that was just very silly. You know, when I got out on the road, then I was like, oh shit, you know. You know, Athens was the big thing back then, you know.
Georgia.
So I knew Athens, Georgia had a big scene, you know, the sort of you know, Pylon and REM and obviously, you know, B-52s, and, you know, Athens was really cranking it out. In fact, there was a documentary done about Athens music scene in like, you know, 85 or I just remember, but it was called Athens, Georgia, Inside and Out. And it had Dexter Romweber in it. And he lived in Chapel Hill, so I don't know what that was all about, but.
There's so much talent around that area, though. I mean, Chapel Hill, North Carolina specifically.
North Carolina, indeed.
Yeah. So what band, how did you transform or like get in? When did Squirrel Nut Zippers start? That's basically it. And how did you get in there?
I was drumming in a rock band, but I was starting to listen to pre-war jazz with a vengeance. And I had this old jazz fake book. So I was learning these songs, and I was learning how to write those kinds of songs. And then the guys in my rock band would play some of those songs that I was writing and some old covers. And it was a little weird because we'd be fully sort of amped up, and then we'd do this acoustic thing with like fiddle, and they were very sweet. I think they were kind of indulgent, you know. And then another band on our label was this band called Metal Flake Mother, and they had released this incredible album, Beyond the Java Sea, that sounded kind of like, you know, Pixies, the Pixies playing Dick Dale songs in the woods at night next to Tom Waits' house, sort of. And their drummer was this guy, Jimbo. And then I'd hang out with Jimbo, and then their guitar player got booted, and so I sat in on drums, and that's sort of a Chapel Hill thing. And then and then they sort of, Metal Flake Mother imploded. And by this time, Jimbo had met Catherine, and they had fallen in love, and they lived in this horrible little farmhouse out in the northern part of the county. And then they started like attracting, you know, oddballs and iconoclasts like Ken Mosier and Don Raleigh and Chris Phillips, and they formed Squirrel Nut Zippers, and that would have been something like spring of '93. And I was hanging out with Jimbo, and he was like, I'm forming a jazz band. And I knew exactly what he meant. Like, he didn't mean Ornette Coleman, or what he meant. Right. The stuff that we were listening to when we would double date, you know, with me and my girlfriend and Catherine, and like Fats Waller records and stuff like that. The stuff that I had been playing in my band. And I was like jealous, very jealous. But my band didn't break up until December of that year. And I wasn't going to bail on them. Besides, I actually hadn't been invited. I sat in a couple of times or whatever with them, and then they asked me in January of '94, and then, you know, and I said, I want to bring in Stacy Guess on trumpet. Stacy, the band had no horns; it was an acoustic, like a string band, mm-hmm. And so I thought it could do with some horns. So Stacy came in on trumpet, and then when we did our first record, Kenny switched to saxophone, and then that sort of jogged my memory that I actually had learned how to play saxophone. And these people were fearless. He said this. He started playing it. And I was like, well, how long have you been playing? He goes, oh, I learned in middle school, you know. And I was like, well, shit, I did too. You know, I don't have an excuse. I better pick it back up. But that was how that band was. Damn. I went to clarinet on this track. Oh, I guess I'd better learn how to play it. You know.
That sounds like a lot like what we do, video people, where we have these ideas, and then we're like, I don't know how to do it. Well, let's figure out how to do it. And
wonderful. It's wonderful. I think the best description of the band was by one of the guys in Manhattan Transfer, where he's like, oh, 30s punk. And I'm like, well, that's it. You know, it's like this DIY thing that we all grew up with. You know, I can play this music. I can play this 3 chords. I can get up on stage and play rock music. And then we sort of applied it to the kind of pre-war thing, jazz thing, which was also popular music, and it was rocking, or some of it was really rocking, you know, and there wasn't anybody to tell us that we were full of shit, yeah, or that we couldn't play in tune, or that we didn't have any chops, most of which was true.
So how did you, I mean, at one point did it start taking off? I mean, everyone has that, you know.
Yeah, the first fucking show the band ever played, seriously, it was like, you know, Catherine was like, well, I'm an artist. I'm not a musician. And all these guys are like, let's take this on the road, you know. And she's like, well, no, I don't want to destroy my beautiful mind. And they were like, no. Okay. All right. It's an art project. Let's just do one show. We should do one show. And they do one show in this basement restaurant, Henry's Bistro. And it's packed. And not only is it packed, but everybody knows about it in town, and it becomes this event, you know. And then I'm bartending up the street, and my manager left to go to, you got to come down here. And I'm like, Lane, I got to close the restaurant, man. This is the best fucking thing I've ever seen. And with a couple of exceptions, you know, where they would go out of town and people were like, what? But most of the time people flipped. And so by the time I got on board, I was like, if I don't catch this train now, it's going to be gone. You know what I mean? It's going to be out of the station. So I can't explain it really. We would not go and play in other markets until we made money. And we didn't have to. So this whole idea of touring is like, well, you play the places where they know you and you make money, and then you go up to Boston and you lose your shirt, but when you come back, you might break even. And then when you come back again, you know, you might have a market, you might have a fan base there. Zippers walked into towns making money.
Damn.
No, it was insane, dude. It was insane. We go to Atlanta for the first time, and we open up for some band at Smith's Old Bar, and it's the house is packed, and people scream so loud my eardrums shut down. Like they actually stopped working. And we go to San Francisco for the first time. We go to the West Coast for the first time, you know, after we release our first record. I've never been to California. I'd never been to San Francisco. We play Cafe du Nord. It's packed and everybody knows all the words to the first record. I'm like, what the heck? What is this? It's like we've tapped into something. We've hit a main line. We've hit a main line.
That was like right after the. I mean, it was kind of the beginning or a middle. I mean, the grunge, was kind of wearing off, and people were looking for something different. Or was it? Am I speaking out my ass?
That's my take on it. I was sitting on the couch with Jimbo, watching Saturday Night Live when Nirvana played, and I turned to him and I said, "Well, that's it for grunge." I just knew that put the stake in it. They were great and they rocked, but it was something about them getting that high, because at the time, when I was a young cat, when I was in college, I listened to the college radio station, and they played bands like The Cure and Echo and the Bunnymen, and then later the Pixies, or Fugazi, or all these bands that were college radio. These people didn't sell records. REM, they weren't selling any records. And then then there was 120 Minutes on MTV, and then there was Alternative Nation, which I thought was sort of ironic. And then there was this grunge scene in Seattle with the other bands that were college radio bands that weren't selling any records. And then, Nevermind comes out, 20 years ago?
Wow.
To the day. Yeah. And then Kablooey. And then all of a sudden you've got a mainstream, a sort of a top 40 thing happening. And I don't think that didn't work out well for them, And then around the time the Zippers formed, so this would have been, 94,
mm-hmm.
There's this lounge thing. There was a band called Combustible Edison. You remember them?
Yes.
Vibraphone and a cocktail drum kit, and they were cool and interesting and sort of ironic. And people were like, lounge music, like that kitschy stuff in the 50s, and we should all smoke cigars and drink martinis. And then they were like, Squirrel Nut Zippers, you're a lounge band. And I'm like, no, we're doing other stuff, And then we make one record and it does fine, and we make another record and it does fine. We do the hot record in late 95, and it comes out the following spring, and it sells something like 40,000 copies. That was good. That was good. And we had this touring base. We're playing the Summer Olympic Games in Atlanta, and we're hitting the whole country, and we're doing really well. We're doing it's amazing in Atlanta, and we're doing great in San Francisco, and we're doing great in Boston. And we got our stuff's kind of set up. And we go in to do the third. We're doing the third record, and the label is like, "We have to meet with you right away."
Ooh.
And we were like, "Whoa, it's the middle of a session. Wow, they're going to drop us." That's what we thought. They're going to drop us. We're too smart mouthy. Somehow they're not making enough money on us, which doesn't make any sense. We recorded the hot record in 6 days for $12,000.
Wow.
Like, no, they're going to drop us. And then they come in, they're like, "You have a hit." And we were like, "What does that mean?" That's what we said. What does that mean? They knew exactly what it meant.
So did you ever have at any point during this, you know how a lot of artists go through the studios and they have that bad, like where they get taken advantage of, or did you walk in and you were already hot where they're just like, let's just go with them?
Recording studios?
Yeah, recording studios.
Every record was different. So the first record, it was our first record, and we were kind of feeling it out, and we did it up at Wave Castle in Hillsborough, and there's a hell of a lot of compression on it, and it just, and I didn't pay, at the time, I paid no attention to production at all. And we did a record. Some of it I really like, but we're also clunky as hell. Good Lord. I can't sing for shit. And there's a real A for effort kind of, and when it's good, it's really good. But then, I don't really listen to these albums, by the way. When we came down to New Orleans, it was like, whoa, we're going to do it in Kingsway. This is Daniel Lanois' studio. This is a 22,000 square foot mansion in the French Quarter. It's $1,200 a day. We can't afford it really, but we're going to convince the label that we have to do it. And they bought it. suckers. And we go in and do it. We have 5 days, and we'd been touring that record for 6 months or something. So we cut it live. But see, I came in and said, why don't we cut it live? Like, that's what all our heroes did. These boys didn't have tape machines. You know what I mean? They had 2 mics, you know, all that stuff, all that Duke Ellington stuff, that Fats Waller stuff, Cab Calloway, Django Reinhardt. That stuff was being cut on the lathe while it was recorded. Maybe they had a 4-channel mixer. Maybe. Sometimes it was 1 mic and go. And so I thought, we're good live, and we'll save time. And why track when you just sound good? So we tried it with Put a Lid on It, and Chris P didn't like it because the tape sped up. And then, but we kept doing live takes. But then we started close micing stuff. And to make a long story short, we ended up just going with the live take 2 or 3 mic stuff. For the most part, there was overdubs. The interesting thing, though, is that the master of Put a Lid on It was accidentally erased, destroyed. And this was during a mixing session, so I was like, well, you know, guess we'll get it on the next record. But Mike Napolitano had made a running DAT of the session, a digital audio tape, where it was just a reference. And he had just thrown up 3 faders because we only used 3 mics. And all we had to do was get Duke Heidker back in to cut trumpet on it. So that's actually...
Oh, wow.
...of that song that's on the record is his DAT reference tape. And because we cut it live, you know, it could be retrieved like that. I always like cutting stuff live whenever possible.
Man, watching some of the videos and some of your shows, it looked like so much fun. Like, as a performer, how much fun was it for you?
It was a criminal act of fun. I mean, because I really like the songs. On stage, I loved those people like my family. Off stage, they're impossible, you know, and we ended up despising each other. I think each one of it, there were 7 of us, so we were each one of the deadly sins, you know what I mean? But we never brought that stuff on stage, ever. And then we had our own thing going on, and we were very interested in never playing something the same way twice and playing for each other. I had this thing with Ken. We had this thing where we would yell out whole tone scale, and someone would have to play a whole tone scale in the middle of a solo. And the whole tone scale is like a Schoenberg kind of, you know, an ugly sort of, you know, modernistic sound and stuff like that all the time. So that just playing with that band was really fun. And then you had these crowds who just showed up expressly to have the greatest night of their lives.
I mean, people danced.
Oh, yeah, teed it up.
Yeah.
You know, spontaneous conga lines and shit. People losing their minds. Crazy, like weeping stuff. Just craziness. God. You know?
How did that affect you, being so successful and being in that? Like, did you...
That kind of success I found to be the most satisfying thing available to an artist. That's as good as it gets. That kind of success, selling out shows to people who love you and want you to do well, who are so pleased by what you do and so supportive, you know, that's the pinnacle, you know. Doesn't get better. You end up playing things you didn't think you were capable of because you've got so much lift. You know what I'm saying? I play saying things that I didn't think that I was actually that I would not have thought possible, given my sort of limited abilities. Just like being shot out of a cannon. So if that's success, you know, that's the best thing ever. The other crazy high pressure, super high pressure, and then people trying to, you know, bust you up and pour poison in your ear stuff, and sharks in the water, and how money changes people, and the swing scene, and that giant boat anchor that was hung around our necks, and a horrible radio people who ran up and down the aisles talking about how they owned bands and pay for play and I don't know what all. That sucked. I hated that shit. And that made me lose my mind.
Oh, I can imagine. I mean, you hear about it and you listen to the radio, and it sucks. It absolutely sucks.
So concentrated. And then it was like Hot was 8 months old when it hit. And then they're like, oh, we're not going to stop working this record. So we released that record in May of 96, and we didn't have another record release until August of 98. We worked that record for over 2 years, and it just, can you imagine? Everybody stopped writing new material.
Wow.
And we didn't go into the studio. We just kept working the same record. And I was like, they're going to work us to death. And that's actually what they want. They're actually going to work us to death. And then we just imploded. And the worst part, I think, the fame thing is that you can take 95% of it and go like, well, it's not real, That's not real. Those people, they don't care about me. They care about my fame. I'm not going to internalize this. This is just a shadow play. I understand that this is all just a kind of a phantom and a construct. But then there's that other like 5%, which is, no, you really are special. You've always been special. See, and this validates that. This is why you are, above, other people, stuff. And it's like, whoo, that shit is poison.
I was going to say, how do you juggle that?
You get off tour and you go home into a little house in Pittsburgh and you sit on the couch and stare at the wall for 2 days and snap at your wife.
If you don't mind me asking about, your kid when he was diagnosed, when did that?
Just gonna run the greatest hits.
Oh, it was?
No. I'm kidding. But like when he was diagnosed 9 days after his mommy moved out.
Wow.
Which was 6 years ago yesterday when she moved out. And then on October 1st, and then on October 9th, he was diagnosed with acute lymphocytic leukemia. And worst day of my life. He's alive and he kicked it. He had a 3.5-year treatment program where he was hospitalized often and, gratuitously.
Now, you're self-employed too.
Not at the time.
Oh, okay.
It was a hat trick. So the wife leaves and the kid gets cancer, and then our co-publisher who was working at Lionsgate sold off his publishing interest, and all licensing stuff and soundtrack stuff stopped. And all of a sudden I went from making a lot of money to, the following year I made 1/4 as much money as I made, and I went back to bartending, resenting it. But I was like, what are you going to do? I was traumatized. I was sort of emotionally maxed out, and they put a port under my son's skin so that they could give him injections of chemo and then take out blood, and it's all very convenient. But they're super, super careful about these kids not getting a line infection because it can lead to sepsis, which just kills them. Just fucking kill them. So any fever over 100.5, he had to be hospitalized. And you over at a friend's house for dinner on your second glass of wine, and he starts to look a little punky, and you're like, okay, well, here we go. You take, and that was 3.5 years. Just go to the ER and wait for your room, He never got systemic staph infection. He never got one, but you never messed with it, And there's a lot more too, stuff.
One of the things when you were bartending, were you employed full time, and did you have insurance?
Employed full time. We had insurance. I didn't get insurance through bartending. I got insurance. I had insurance anyway, and was able to keep it. And I was employed full time, and didn't want to be, but felt trapped, and therefore made myself trapped. I was working 5 nights a week. This one thing happened where early on I'm there and everybody's nice and I'm working, and the manager comes up and he's like, I put this on for you, buddy. And he claps me on the back, and it's the Hot record. And it's like, fuck. And then there's all the, like, us as younger people with, like, our careers ahead of us, recording this jubilant music in this giant mansion in New Orleans, and all of that stuff that happened had yet to happen. And then Hell comes on, and I'm like, in this song, I scream my balls off. Everybody loved it. And when I play it live, I'd scream and everybody just flipped out, and it was like this huge thing. So I'm in this restaurant listening to a recording of me screaming, and nobody's looking up from their dinner. Wow. But I want to scream. I want to scream like that right now because of how trapped I feel, because I'm actually in hell. But if I did that, everyone would think I was psychotic.
Dude, you just described a scene that was so, it's like, so, like, I could see shooting what you just described, like, perfectly. I understand it.
Yeah. Dude. And it was like, there was this I was going to say there's a discipline I learned. I learned nothing. But what you have to do is take it. And that's not such a bad thing to take. Having to maybe go back to working a job, nobody's going to shed a tear, okay? Oh, rock star has to work for a living, whatever, you know. But when your kid is de-accessed, and oops, they forgot to give him the Vin Kristen push, and so they need to stick a needle back in his chest again, but they miss, and he's a bloody mess, and he's sitting in your lap screaming. And you know what I mean? And you can feel his body move back when they push the needle in. And then you just have to just take it. Then you drive to get the cinnamon bun with him. He's already forgotten it. He's already over it. He's like, cinnamon bun, you know. He's 4 or 5. But I would be just, it would just be this, what was the feeling? It was like a simmering resentment or something that I would just, you know, what are you going to do? I freaked out one time at the hospital and screamed at them and told them they were brutalizing my son because of some just horrible. He was really sick and really weak, and they just kept giving him this stuff because they, you know, they're pretty rigorous about the programs, and they all just stopped and looked at me helplessly, and I was like, well, this isn't helping. You know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, who was I mean, were you his only support?
No, his mom was definitely in there. She didn't bail on the kids. She just moved out. She just wanted a divorce. Okay. So I wasn't. And then when there could be, there were family members who would show up and help out, and friends who would show up and help out. But, you know, and especially when this stuff first happened, there was a lot of people who were just, you know, doing, you know, but, you know, 3 years into it, no, you know, you go up on the ward, and, you know, I would go there during the day and then leave for work, you know, sometimes. And if I could, you know, you stay over. That's a hell of a thing. Pediatric oncology ward. The way that it looks and sounds, and the way that pull-out couch feels and all that stuff, that's intense.
Now, being creative, like, how did that? I mean, did you have a way to, you know, release some of that, or did you you were so, you know, in the moment that you couldn't do anything?
I stopped writing and I stopped performing.
You're just 100% like
stopped.
Yeah, stopped.
Couldn't do it anymore. I did write. There was one thing I went on a trip to Nashville in 2007 to do a soundtrack for a movie that never got released, and I wrote a couple of songs that ended up being on Kingdom Come. One of them is Tenderness, which is about being up on the ward. And so there was some stuff that came out, but for the most part, I had no time for such frivolities. And of course I don't, it's not frivolous, but that's how my brain, you know, when 2006, everything became transactional. Everything became quantifiable. It was the counts, the white blood cell counts in my son's blood panel. It was how much vincristine he was getting. It was how long the IV drip was going to last. It was the amount of money, cash money I had in my pocket after the bartending shift. Everything could be held and counted, and there was no room at all for, feelings or an expression of feelings to me. The idea of, oh, I have an hour, so I'll go sit down with my guitar and a cup of coffee. Oh, no. And it's a shame. And I about damn lost it. I mean, emotionally, I think I went into a hole, but I think I about lost the ability to even do it at all. That's probably not true, but it's weird how it's like I kicked the muse out ceremoniously. I was like, you have to leave now. And he's slow to come back.
Yeah, I can understand to a certain point. I went through a divorce, and I can't imagine something like that also kicking in, because that's such a trap. Like, for me, it was, even though I was the one that asked for it, it was still hard.
Yeah, you got a divorce.
Yeah, I got divorced, and I got divorced, lost my job, house is up for sale.
Oh yeah, awesome. And middle age, awesome.
Yeah, it was.
Like, can I sign up for this?
And it was just weird. Like, the funk that I was in, I just never. And it wasn't really about the moment. It was about like looking back at all the shit that accumulated up to that moment, and it was hard to get out of that for a while. Like, I still have sometimes, because I feel like a failure, like, as far as being, getting divorced.
Yeah, amen. Oh shit. It took me years to realize that I was no longer faithful to my wife, obviously, because I didn't want to be married to her anymore, and that was all over. But I was still faithful to my marriage. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the trauma of Eston's illness, like, I was terrified. I didn't want to do it alone. I didn't think I was capable of doing it. And then I'm back on the market. Oh, this was a clusterfuck. But mostly my strategies was just like to frantically try to find a replacement wife. That's what I tried to do. That does not go over well.
No.
It does not.
Did they come running?
They ran all right. But now I'm in Carborough and everything's groovy, But like the thing is that it was a sort of a linear thing. It wasn't like I was able to deal with the emotional trauma of my separation and divorce, as well as my small son's life-threatening illness. No, it was like, oh, I'm putting all that shit on the emotional credit card. I'm not going to deal with that now. And you become sort of like a linebacker. You just got to shoulder through this thing. There's something right in your face. Oh, his IV pump he's got air in the line. I mean, it's like that. You know what I mean? Or like, I need to sleep now so I can get up in the morning and go back to the hospital stuff. And then when he finished treatment, that's when I actually fell apart. That's when I actually had a nervous breakdown, like an honest to God 1950s nervous breakdown. I should have taken some awesome pharmaceuticals and drank martinis to get that. But
that's your body was telling you, or your mind was telling you, okay, now it's time to let go. I mean, you just...
Yeah, because you actually are relaxing your defensive posture that you've held for years.
I'll tell you what happened was when I moved down here, right after Tim passed away, I got sick for about 2 months straight. I could not...
That doesn't surprise me at all.
I could not figure out what was going on. I went to the doctor every week with a different symptom, and I was fatigued, everything. It was just so weird. But it was all that stress that just fucked my body up. It's just crazy.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, when the shit is happening, you're like, look, I need to be on deck. I need to do this. I have a job to do. I'm not gonna, and then it's the big payback.
Oh yeah.
And yeah. I mean, it makes sense. At the time, I was like, "Why now?" Why now that he's been given the all clear? But now I'm like, "Well, of course."
Yeah. Well, no. So once he he was cleared, all cleared, and you went through your breakdown.
Yes, I did.
How did you get back on your feet?
Oh God, I put myself in a position of suffering for so long that I decided that I actually didn't deserve to suffer anymore.
Good.
And I was like, fuck this. And I was like, I had stopped performing and do, and then Snooze is diagnosed with lymphoma. And I'm like, wow, really? Really? Cancer? And he has no health insurance, and
Yeah.
So all that stuff happens where, there's the Snooze Fest and I'm asked to play. And I'm telling you, dude, it had been a couple of years. I was scared to death. I had lost so much weight that I was sort of a skeletal. Of course, I was starting to get girl action because I was so skinny. But it was because I think I was dying, actually. I think I was dying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I go play this show and get this huge response and actually help Snooze and see all my buddies. And I'm standing on the side of the stage with a beer in my hand. Hello. I've been doing that since I was 20 years old, except, I'd stopped. And I'm standing there and I'm like, I don't know, Greg Humphreys is playing or something. And I'm like, well, these are my people.
Yeah.
These are my people. Like, this is what I chose. This is who I am. This is what I do. It is silly for me to not do this anymore. It's preposterous. It's actually damaging. It's physically damaging for me to not do this. So I'm going to do everything possible to get back to this, and it's going to start with selling the house. And and it's been a very long thing, but it was basically like, I relentlessly pursued, self-employment and artistic expression again, because it's kind of what I do.
But your self-employment now, you're going across. I mean, you're doing a bunch of different things. You talk about the things you're.
It's a hustle. Got to hustle.
Mm.
I'm like, because I have to diversify. Look, I can't work for other people. I resent authority. I respect authority, except when people don't deserve it, and then I resent the shit out of them. Sitting at a desk for any amount of time, I can't do it. Like, I'm all itchy and twitchy.
I'm the same way, and I sit at a desk every day.
I can't.
I know.
And so I was like, I decided a long time ago that I was going to do this thing. So then I need to diversify my income stream, basically, some mailbox money here from performance royalties and teaching music over here and having an article published over here and this and performing over here. And that way, this is what keeps the wolf from the door. And I identified the 2 or 3 things that I do well. And I'm like, stick with what you know, son, and try to, if you heat up enough irons, pretty soon, not only will one of them catch, but like they'll sympathetically heat up the other ones, and I find that that's what's starting to happen now. And that's fantastic because it was a little hairy when I was on unemployment.
Hey, I was on that wonderful system for how long?
In my 40s.
Oh, in your 40s.
For 6 months, but I just, lose or, I of course had paid into it and everything. I mean, dude, it didn't help that the bottom dropped out in 2008. It did not help at all.
I do have to say, though, that Snooze Fest where you're talking about all your friends and everyone around you, I've never felt a better environment to be in than Snooze Fest, especially the second one, just because it was Greensboro and it was unreal how.
It was unreal.
And then it was. I wanted to strangle the people in the back that were talking, But I mean, that's their bar. They're hanging out in the Blind Tiger. They don't really know what's going on, but they're just talking, and it was just like, don't you guys understand? But that's what a bar is. But it was just fantastic, and that's how I came across you the first time when I met you.
Yeah, I actually sang that night. The first night I was so nervous. The second one, we hit it out of the park. And everybody else. And it was the same vibe in the house. And it was the same vibe and this is the thing, this is the upside of cancer. Because there is one, And so my catchphrase about this is that I wouldn't I wouldn't wish it on anyone, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. Because you see a quality in other people and in yourself that is extraordinary, that is not available to you when you're like, you know, stuck in traffic or buying groceries. You don't see this incredible capacity of people to embrace and lift up and forgive and protect and serve. It's fucking incredible.
Yeah.
And so you go into the Snooze Fest thing and people are weeping openly, and it's not bad. And they're talking about fear and loss, and they're talking about redemption and all this big important stuff. And it's not, nobody's running away from it, and nobody is trying to pretend, you know, oh, don't cry stuff. No, you're just by sobbing, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible.
It was, man. And Blake and I both, we still have all that footage we haven't been able to put together. And that's something we definitely want to do in the future, because it's, both of us look at each other, we're like, it was just such an amazing night. And if we could put something together, it would just be incredible.
I think nobody wishes anybody to be, you know, up against it like that. But I think people really do want to help on that level. They really do want to participate and feel. There's a buddy of mine that I went to college with. I reconnected with him a few years ago. We sat down for lunch and commiserated. I told him about Eston's cancer, and he told me about his wife having survived ovarian cancer. So then I said, well, my son's being treated for leukemia. And he goes, oh, so you've had real problems. And I'm like, yeah. And but so his mom just passed, and so I had these apples, and I was like, kids, let's take him a care package. And Evelyn, my daughter, made this like origami owl, and we wrote this note, and we brought them these apples. And it was just that. I mean, and we left it on the door, and then he writes. And when we came back, though, Evelyn especially was like, that feels so good.
Did you put some pot in those apples?
No.
Passing it forward.
Excellent callback. Oh my God. That's got to end the interview.
No way.
But listen, anytime I crawl up my own ass like that, or I see somebody else doing it, I'm like, stop whatever you're doing and go serve somebody. Like, seriously, go look for somebody to fucking help. Because you need a little bit of an attitude readjustment, and nothing feels so good. Don't go out and shop and buy yourself some expensive piece of crap.
Yeah.
That doesn't make you feel good for like in anything beyond a sort of a surface way. Go volunteer at the fucking soup kitchen, you know? That's what's going to bring your ass around. Seriously. I mean, it's honestly its own reward. Like, you know, I don't think there is an altruistic act, because I think it's more of a sympathetic act, because you have a sympathetic response to the thing that you're doing. That which you were doing for the other, you're doing also unto yourself. You know, it's incredible.
And that's what I think. I mean, that's what I also learned from doing Often Awesome, the series, was when people go, I don't want to watch, you know, someone die, and I'm like, it's not about Tim dying. There's nothing we could do. It's about people helping somebody like under extraordinary conditions and doing things just out of pure kindness. They know they can't stop the disease, but they want to make his life as good as it possibly can. And it's like, I don't understand how people could just turn away. It's like everyone dies.
Dude, they're afraid. They're scared to death.
Yeah.
And people, there are some people that don't just la 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 la, don't want to hear about it. You know, I had some agent. I have a literary agent now, but I had an agent who said when I was writing about Eston's illness, he said, illness memoirs don't sell. Or some other editor was like, I couldn't really, maybe it's because I'm not a dad, but I couldn't really feel anything when Tom was talking about his son being diagnosed.
Did you ever like, are you not human, you fuck?
They don't want to deal. They don't want to burn la 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 la. You know, if they don't have kids, they don't have that feeling, maybe necessarily. And if they do, it's just so scary that they'll just shut down. But of course, if you turn and embrace it, and say, I'm scared to death. This scares me to death. Then you actually have a chance of making something of it or doing something with it.
I mean, that series changed my life. Like, I do not complain anymore. Every now and then I will, but it's when I hear people talk about certain things, I don't chastise them. I try not to, but I try to explain. There are other things that are a little bit more important. Don't let that stress eat at you. I went through a lot of shit. Just calm down. Don't worry. The line will move in 10 minutes.
One time I had rehearsal and the bass player called right before, and he was like, I can't come because my daughter's been sent home because they have head lice at the school. And I was like, yeah, that happens. And I was talking to the fellas about it, and I'm like, man, because not all of us have kids. I was like, the head lice is a drag, and you have to do all this stuff and comb it out and whatever, bomb the house.
I remember having them.
Right. And one of them was like, did you, he goes, why are you acting like it's a bad thing? Like your kid had cancer. And I'm like, that doesn't count. That's off the charts. You don't go like, sorry, did you say head lice? I thought you said leukemia. That's what I thought you said, that your daughter has leukemia. You can't go around and do that every day. And then I said, there's another thing that's off the charts when you're in that boat, which is the people whose kids died.
Yeah.
Like, that's off the charts. I don't understand that. My son is alive, right? So then the whole thing can seem to have some sort of purpose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I'm not sure what the moral of this story is. One should never get into comparative suffering. People for a long time would go like, they would start to talk about some problem. They'd be like, well, probably shouldn't tell you because it really is nothing like you've been through. And I'm like, dude, I'm really okay. Oh, I don't think comparative suffering is a good thing. There's no I win here.
So I'm going to transition back to music for a second.
Yeah.
Did you put out the CD or a new album last year?
Yeah, it's year before last. Yeah, in a kind of a quiet kind of way.
Now, what's the kind of difference between that and what you did earlier?
There's no horns on it because I didn't know any horn players around here. It may not be quite as well produced because I produced it. And then also it's just paying for it out of pocket. The whole point of the exercise to me at the time when I was recording it in, say, 2009 was to just not die. So it was like, I love the recording. I love recording. So if I can have this thing, if I can have these sessions booked during the day, when I bartend at night, then it'll be an escape valve. It never occurred to me really to issue it. This is the thing, like, you should do an interview with me and Snooze because we're very similar creatures. It's very strange. We do not want to publicize ourselves. We're no good at it. We love to perform. We love to make records. We love for people to hear those records. But the whole like me, looky, look, I'm doing this thing, and let's do a photo session. I'm so bad at photo sessions. I don't, and so I was like, well, I guess I should put the record out. But man, no.
It's not just you and Snooze. It's a lot of creative people.
Some kind of weird self-esteem thing, but also there's some. I don't really feel that way about other artists. I mean, there are a few of them where I'm like, oh, you're a jackass. But I don't look at somebody's photo session and go like, you have no right to take pictures or something. Sometimes I go like, man, you look great.
Yeah.
And I like this record. It's just I exempt myself from whatever. I don't get it, blah-de-doo. But yeah, I put the record out, and when it's good, it's really good. Unfortunately, it's not it's not spectacular. And what I mean by that is, like, I have a tradition of making records that are either spectacularly good or spectacularly bad. I mean, just no in between. If it goes off the rails, whatever happens, it should be spectacular. Some of the Kingdom Come record is good enough. I sound like I'm dumping on it. But there's also stuff on there that's, it's the wife leaves, kid gets cancer record. I'm not going to make another one. I mean, there's some pretty heavy duty stuff on there that I'm pretty proud of in terms of songwriting and performance with these guys. And It's kind of a little bit of a downer.
Well, the great thing about it is like you still have this amazing connections with all these musicians, and
Oh,
I mean, like when we shot that your Jacob Marley video,
oh yeah.
that was so much fun. I've never experienced anything like that before.
Really?
Well, I mean, doing it live.
Filmed bands performing live.
Yeah, but not as a music video where we go back and like the way we did it. It was so different because normally music videos we have a track, we go and then they go play to this, and so we get them to play it to it, so we can cut around it.
It just seems to suck all the air out of the room.
No, it does.
When I did my solo record, my first solo record, Samsara, I don't know if you've heard it. I should get you a copy. But the guy that played trumpet on with the Zippers or on the Hot record, Duke Heidker, came, and so I had some just these heavy hitters guys. Mark Mullins, who played trombone in Harry Connick's band, and Julius McKee, who's sousaphone player for the Dirty Dozen. This shit's ridiculous. So anyway, these guys showed up, and they're like, "Well, what song are we going to do?" And I go like, "Here it is, fellas," and I would play it, and I would have it charted just chords, and they'd say things like, "Do you want the riff to follow the changes?" Because I wouldn't sing it correctly. That was their way of being very, very politely telling me that I couldn't sing the riff correctly. Then we go in, third take, we'd have it. Third take, and I'm such a perfectionist. And I'd be like, nope, that's it. That's it. And so I had this idea. This was at Kingsway, too. The idea at the time was just do a 3-camera shoot, have a little stage thing, invite 50 people into this giant, opulent house, 4 or 5 mics, go. There's your whole album. There's your whole DVD. You're done because you got these guys that are so good. The feel is so good. If you have a crowd that's behind you, a couple of wrong notes here and there, hey man, it's like marks in fine leather. You know what I mean?
I love live performances more in the studio, just because. I mean, it just feels so much better.
Yeah, and there's this organic give and take, and Anyway, that's what I want to do all the time. But you have to have people who can pull it off. Yeah. I mean, I have this whole sort of theory about tracking and bleed. Like, I'll just give you this one little sliver. So a long time ago, there was no tracking. No one could track. There was no multi-tracking. You just couldn't do it. Like, you couldn't do it. And then the 50s, they had tape. Then you could go like, oh, I'll do my vocal later. And then you had things like Chet Baker playing trumpet, and then he goes back and sings, which is kind of cool. And then by the 60s, you've got, Sgt. Pepper's, where it's like, but they're still kind of cutting backing tracks live, honestly. But then the engineers started saying, we're going to get the purest signal if the musician records alone, individually. So there won't be anything coming into his microphone except whatever it is that he's playing. Anything that came into his microphone that wasn't what he was playing was called bleed through. Mm. Bleed. Engineers talk about bleed. That's ugly.
Yeah, it is.
It's actually ambient sounds when dudes would play together in a room. So then this whole thing, the whole fundamental core of musical performance, as it had been uninterrupted for, 30,000 years, was all of a sudden termed bleed. So you got dudes wearing headphones in a darkened room playing their part, hoping to get it right to a metronomic click track. You're screwed. Okay? You're never the whole soul of the performance, the give and the take, that inspired me to do this thing, or the sort of like maybe it speeds up a little bit, stuff. It's gone. It's gone. It's gone. And you got engineers going like, that is a damn clean bass sound.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. So, it's got to kind of come back around. The bands that know how to do it these days are like the bluegrass bands. You watch bluegrass bands, those motherfuckers crowd around the mic. Literally, there's a mic. And if they're going to solo, they take 2 steps up. And they can balance themselves beautifully. Like they really know what they're doing.
Man, this was so much fun. Thank you so much, Tom.
Andy, it's a real pleasure. I'm sorry if I was too verbose. Not really.
Anytime you want to just take weekend off, come down to Charleston, you're more than welcome.
I would love to get back to Charleston because I love that town.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Talent Freaks. Tom's creative journey from fronting Squirrel Nut Zippers to exploring new artistic avenues continues to leave a lasting impact on music and storytelling. His work captures the essence of reinvention and artistic expression. Now, I'm excited because I always enjoyed talking with Tom, and him and I, we haven't had many close conversations, but when we did, I would always listen attentively and enjoyed being around him. If you want to explore more of Tom's work, you can visit him at tommaxwell.com, where you'll find his latest music, writings, and projects. Now, he also has his own podcast, and it's on Audible Original, called Shelved, which explores the history and drama behind albums that were deemed too controversial, too far from the beaten path, or too ahead of their time for public consumption. Through interviews with musicians, producers, record executives, and journalists, as well as archival audio, key music, and personnel storytelling, each episode examines the shelved album's place in musical history and the spectacles behind each missed or nearly missed release. You can also view the music video I created for Tom back in 2012 for his single, Jacob Marley. All links will be in the description of this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and rate the podcast. It truly helps others discover these incredible stories. If you'd like to get to know my work, visit talentfreaks.com to see some of the videos that I've worked on, as well as the photography that I'm currently doing and so much in love with. And if you have suggestions for future guests or topics, feel free to reach out. I'm always eager to bring new and exciting conversations to the podcast. Until next time, keep exploring, keep creating, and stay curious.